All right, good evening, everyone. The Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee is now in order. We'll begin with a land acknowledgement. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that work and live in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest tonight? Okay, we'll move forward then to the approval of the agenda. And a reminder that going forward with the resolutions, I'll need a mover and a seconder. So for the approval of the agenda, do I have someone to move it? Thank you, Councillor Kristangi. And the seconder, Councillor DeFlavio. All in favor? That's great and carried. Thank you. And then moving forward to the receipt of previous minutes for September the 16th, 2024. Can I have a mover? Brian. And a seconder. Wonderful, that's Amy. All in favor? That's great, thank you, and carried. Okay, moving forward with the agenda, we have a verbal update for our working group. I will be delivering that update, so let me just grab it on my screen here. Okay, so in this month's agenda, we put forward our project plan for our education and outreach working group. As a reminder, this is our Heritage Grimsby mapping project that we're working on with the Grimsby Museum, as well as Nell's Manor and the Grimsby Historical Society. The outline or the plan outlines objectives, deliverables, and a timeline through to the end of 2025. And first and foremost, the main deliverable here would be a comprehensive public inventory of the heritage and cultural landmarks and assets across the community, as well as interpreting this cultural and built heritage in the community. This would be through a digital map as well as a print map, and with the hopes of preparing a guided walking tour that we can offer alongside Nell's Manor and the Grimsby Museum for the fall. There's exciting things coming up next year in 2025 with this big plowing match that's happening in Niagara. So something that perhaps this project could work towards highlighting the cultural and built heritages of Grimsby and getting not just the community but visitors also excited and interested in all the heritage we have to offer. So does anyone have any comment or questions regarding the plan? I'm happy to answer anything. All right, so next steps for the project will be to actually come up with our comprehensive list or inventory of all of the cultural and heritage assets. So this again includes not just the designated buildings in town, but also landmarks, public art, murals around town, even our bell boxes that have just get updated, over the last couple of years. So having a good inventory of this will then bring that inventory to the committee to make sure that we're not missing anything. And from that list, we hope to have at least top 5 themes or narratives that we can then explore and expand on through the map, kind of make layers on the map, create kind of self-guided tours through the map using these narratives. So that will be coming. We plan to have that to you for if not for, I think I said December, I'm already forgetting. But hopefully, yes, by the end of the year, we'd like to have that list to you for review. Any other questions, anything at all? Okay, fantastic. So that then concludes my verbal update for the working group. There's a resolution here, resolved that the verbal update regarding the working group be received. I'll ask for a mover. Councillor Kristangi, great. And a seconder, Brian, awesome. All in favor? Okay, that's great and carried. Okay, we have two reports for the committee meeting tonight. And the first is Heritage Property Grant Recommendations. And this report will be delivered by Bianca, so go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Through you, the chair. I'm just going to give Garrett a second to get the...
Might need to give me approval.
Sorry, just 1 second. Thank you. I have a summary of quickly of the program, and then I'll give the recommendations from the selection committee. So during the 2024 budget deliberation process, council approved $20,000 towards the grant program. I have a summary of... Sorry about that, we had some technical difficulties. During the 2024 budget deliberation process, council allocated $20,000 towards the establishment of a new grant program. And in August of 2024, we brought forward the final report implementing the program and establishing the criteria. And we were able to officially intake applications on September 19th, 2024. Those applications were due back on October 24th, 2024. And during this intake period, the town received 10 applications. As a part of the application process, property owners were able to indicate if they were applying for $2,000 in matching funds for smaller projects or $5,000 in matching funds for larger projects. Following receipt of all of the applications, they were all reviewed for eligibility and completeness, and all of the 10 submitted applications had met the eligibility criteria and were deemed complete. On October 29th, 2024, the applications were then reviewed by the council-appointed selection committee. The selection committee reviewed all of the applications against the established criteria and determined that 7 properties had achieved the highest scores and that they should be recommended for approval. Among these applications were 4 requests for $2,000 in matching funds, and 3 were applying for $5,000 in matching funds. Due to $20,000 being allocated and the 7 applications achieving the highest scores, the selection committee recommended that 4 grants at $2,000 in matching funds be approved for 4 smaller applications. And then for 3 larger applications, they recommended $4,000 in matching funds. And then I have a quick summary on the screen of these quite detailed applications. So this is just a summary. There's a lot of additional information that was submitted. So one of the recommended applications was 19 Mountain Street for $2,000 in matching fundings, and that's so that they can repair and repoint their stone foundation, so that they can repair their porch and to prevent any further water damage, any animal entry, or any drafts. And then we have 126 Main Street West, which is Nell's Manor, and they're going to be doing some repointing and repairing of the stone porch on the west side of the manor, and they will be resecuring their metal railing system. Another successful applicant being recommended was 92 Main Street West. They'll be repairing sections of their porch that have rotted. They'll be repairing rotten sections of their fascia boards and eavesdrop returns, and then they'll be having their slate roof inspected, and we'll be repainting all of the repaired areas. And then the final recommended for approval at the 2,000 level is 99 Main Street West. This is the seamstress cottage. They'll be replacing the missing wood porch columns and porch ceiling. They'll be repairing the porch beam, and they'll be repainting the repaired areas and the shutters. Next slide, please. And then these are the 3 applications that are being recommended at the $4,000 amount. We felt all of these warranted funding due to the immediacy of the repairs and the importance of not losing original elements. So the first is 104 Main Street West. Main Street East. They'll be repairing the rotten sections of their wooden fascia board and soffits. They'll be repairing their wooden canopy above the front doors, and they'll be repainting the repairs. 37 Main Street West, this is Harmony Jewelers. They'll be excavating and waterproofing along the east wall of the building to prevent any further water infiltration. It's quite a large project, but that's a summary of some of the works there. And then 8 to 10 Ontario Street, they'll be repairing and replacing the Italianate exterior woodwork that was damaged, and they'll be repointing masonry throughout, and they're also going to be fixing some large, there was some like golf-size holes in the back wall that they're going to be sourcing some original brick for, and it's a lot of like water damage in that particular one. So the applications submitted were graded against the established grant criteria. Many of the proposed works will address structural concerns and prevent the further loss of original elements. And so the 4 grants at 2,000 and the 3 grants at 4,000 is the recommendation from the selection committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Bianca. Any questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Councillor Cristangi, go ahead.
Thank you, through Chair. I just had a question, because I'm not sure if we talked about this, or I know that the Nell's Manor is getting the community grant fund for about $15,000, but they're also on this one. I didn't know if they could do both, or we were going to do, I wasn't sure how that worked. So were we aware of that, and that's okay, or?
Thank you. Through the chair. So the eligibility criteria for the grant didn't have any. You couldn't apply for other municipally ran grants. And I think for what they were applying for, it was very suitable for the Heritage Restoration Grant. But that's probably something, I don't know if council wants to talk about, but that's kind of where we were at with that one.
I also want to add, I think the community grant was for a different project. I think the project was for the roof, right? So I wonder if that could be something that we consider two different projects, but definitely good to note. And yeah, maybe something we add into the criteria if needed. I will say it was really great to see that there was 10 properties applied, and to see a mix of nonprofit, some business, as well as private properties too. So it was nice to see that, you know, a diverse range of property owners were applying for the grant. But yeah, that's a good thing to note. And I do wonder if we consider it, if it's like one of those, you know, the criteria or point system or something. Any other questions? Yes, Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, to staff. I just want to commend staff for the turnaround on this grant program, and it's certainly a start. And I think, given the fact that heritage is such a big part of Grimsby, it is nice that the municipality is kind of putting their money where their mouth is. I know it's only $20,000 to start, but every little bit helps. And I think a lot of it's an olive branch, just telling heritage property owners and even people that didn't apply for a grant, just that we're there, and we realize that our heritage component in Grimsby is such a large and important aspect of our community, in the fabric of our community.
Thank you for your comment, Mayor Jordan, and I definitely echo it. And I think having 10 applicants is already proof that, there's need for this, there's interest in this, and hopefully that means that the program will continue and perhaps even grow as there's more interest and as we see those benefits in the community. So yes, thank you for your work on this. Yes, Councilor DeFlavio, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to echo the statements of other members. Any investment we make in heritage is an investment in the community. And in my previous experience, the investments that we've made in facade improvement programs and other grant programs have paid off multiple times over. The amount of money that gets invested in these properties compared to what we're putting into them, it's not even comparable. So it's showing that Grimsby wants to have some skin in the game. It shows that we're serious about heritage, but also we want to celebrate the people who do these things. So I'm looking forward to a year from now when these jobs are completed, where we can go and say, that looks incredible. We're really happy with the way that it turned out, and we can use those as examples for other people to come forward and role model, because what you want is it to be, the 10 applications or 12 applications becomes 20, where it was already difficult this year to make a decision. I want to make it impossible for the committee to make a decision because there are so many people applying for it. And frankly, get to a point where we can increase the amount of money that we put into it, because we see the need to increase the amount of money that we put into it as a municipality. So I think we're at a good place to start, but I think we've got to go up from here based on the results of what we see happening this year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. So first time through this, any learnings, anything you saw in either the process, the form, anything that you took away and said, oh, I think we could tweak this? I mean, it was really well thought out, but anytime you throw the switch and go live, just curious to know if there's anything you took away of maybe we do this differently or adjust it for the next round.
Through the chair, I do have a couple already. It's always great to go through it because you really start to see them. One of the things we talked about doing was not having them obtain the quotes before intake, but I think in retrospect they probably would be helpful. So I think that's something we will likely add to the criteria, that they have to obtain quotes. I think it just helps us make our decisions and the most use of the funding. And then the other one I was going to mention, it just escaped me. I should have wrote it down. I do have the list of this on my desk, but that was one of the ones. There was another one I was going to just mention, but I just forgot about it. I don't know if you remember.
Thanks, Bianca. Councilor DeFlavio, do you have any?
Yeah, having been part of the committee, I think sending it out to the committee ahead of time so that people can have a look at the applications, because we were looking at them fresh that night, would give us a chance to kind of weigh them out, in the way that as a teacher, I look at all of the exams or all of the tests, so I get a kind of an idea of where everybody is before I start to grade. I think that would be a good thing to do with these types of applications as well. So you kind of do a survey of everything and then come back and start grading. And further to that, I would say that a clearer rubric for evaluation. I mean, I was very comfortable with what we came up with, and I think our discussion was very important, all the things that happened, but a clearer rubric that, indicates specifically what we're looking for and how we reach that score for each of them, so that there's, although, even without that, all of our scores were very similar for all of the applications, like within 1 or 2, really, on a scale of 20. So that's pretty good. But I think that even clearer criteria, so we could tell the people who are making the applications, this is what we're looking for. And that way, they know that their application, people should kind of know going in if their application is going to be successful, Having been on the Trillium review team, I saw some applications where those people clearly knew that that was not going to be a successful application unless there was not a lot of people applying. And I think if people know what we're looking for very clearly, we're going to get better applications. So those are the couple of things. So getting it out ahead of time and a really clear definition of what we're looking for are 2 things that I think would be important as we go forward.
Through the chair, I just remembered mine. We were also considering having an earlier intake. So instead of doing it in the fall, we were thinking we would do it more like in the spring so that there was like a longer work time for them to complete it. So that was just one thing we're thinking of doing for next year.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your experience, and thank you for that great question, Brian. Looking forward to seeing this move forward and to seeing how the grant program grows. That's great. Any other questions before we move on? All right. Resolution here then, that report to HR 2417 dated November 12th, 2024 regarding the Heritage Property Grant recommendations be received, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the 2024 Heritage Property Grant funding applicants selected by the Grant Selection Committee be approved, and that the approved applicants enter into grant agreements with the town. Do I have a mover? Amy, great. And a seconder. Councilor DeFlavio. All in favor? And that's carried. Awesome. All right, next up in our reports is a heritage permit report for 2 5th Street, and this will be presented by Garrett. Go ahead.
Thank you through you, Chair. The property at 2 5th Street is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and it is located within the Grimsby Beach neighborhood. The property owners at 2 5th Street are applying for retroactive approval of the demolition of the garage, 2 wooden decks, foundation skirting, as well as retroactive approval of the removal of non-original siding, windows, and doors from the designated building. The heritage permit is also requesting further approval of alterations that will allow for the restoration of the building. The requested additional alteration works include deconstruction and reconstruction of the enclosed porch slash mudroom on the southeast corner of the building and the other sunroom that is facing 2 5th Street, removal of any other modern exterior materials, upgrading the interior structural system for stability, stabilize the foundation with helical piles and piers, install new foundation skirting, restoration of the board and batten siding on the exterior walls, restore the original window and door openings as they are found, stabilize the north porch that is enclosed facing the lake, adding a new glass curtain wall to be installed on the north facades facing the lake on the 1st and 2nd floors, exposing original porch elements as much as possible during the restoration of the exterior materials. Staff recommend that the heritage permit be conditionally approved, subject to the following terms and conditions. So I'll just show on the screen there as well. So the map on the right-hand side, the areas highlighted in red are what has been demolished, and then the areas highlighted in green are what is being requested for further alteration approvals. And then you can see the cottage before the demolition and after the demolition on the left-hand side of the screen there. And then these are the conditions that we're recommending be included. That a structural stabilization plan be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. That the structural stabilization plan outlines how the building will be appropriately reinforced, if required, to enable further exploratory work and restoration. No additional exploratory or restoration work shall occur until the stabilization has occurred, if required. All structural stabilization interventions that may be required to stabilize the building be approved by heritage staff. That a conservation plan be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. And due to the small amount of information provided on the heritage permit application, it is required that all proposed works be further detailed within the conservation plan. And once the above conditions have been satisfied, heritage staff have the delegated authority to approve any minor removal of materials that is required due to unforeseen deterioration. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Garrett. Any questions from the committee? Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Chair, through you. So I'm just trying to rewind. 2 Fifth Street was the property that we designated that was asked to be removed. Now, when the report came forward, the designation report came forward, was there any indication that there was a problem with the structure or with the foundation or with structural stability?
Through the chair. So yes, this is the one that recently came forward. Council, Reverend Burns was the historical figure associated with the house. So the way that the Ontario Heritage Act works with the Ontario Building Code is that the Heritage Act must be followed. And so as updates need to be happen and stabilization and things like that, the Ontario Building Code works alongside the Heritage Act. So the actual condition of a building doesn't weigh into the worthiness of designation. So it's not that an evaluation of the structure need to be conducted prior to pursuing designation. So prior to the designation, I consulted with the chief building official, and this has happened in other scenarios in the town, and it's always been the case that the building code supports the restoration of the buildings, and so if it can be repaired, it should be repaired. And so that's typically how it works that way. So as a report wasn't done prior to designation, but it doesn't really, in the eyes of the legislation, weigh into the merit for designation, if that explains it.
Yeah, that does explain it. So is the owner on board? Is it because they're applying to make changes to the structure and we're giving them permission to make the changes that they need to make to stabilize the structure? I'm just trying to understand what would lead this to come forward at this time. Is it that they've found that we've found that there are structural issues? And if I missed that in your report, I apologize. I'm just trying to understand how we get to this point. And I want to make sure that we're not putting undue burden on homeowners by designating their home when the home is beyond repair, or the kinds of repairs that we're asking for are so economically burdensome that we're making it impossible for them to maintain the heritage home. There's a lot there, so I hope you got what I'm asking.
Through the chair. So the idea behind the stabilization strategy is that they're doing the exploratory work right now to find the original elements of the building. And that's because over time, a lot of layers were added. But as the layers come off, it's going to be like kind of aggravating the structure. So we know that there'll be additional movements that haven't occurred in a long time on the structure. So the idea is that this stabilization strategy will secure the building so we don't have a collapse as they continue to do the exploratory work. So that's the idea behind it. And the intention of the property owners is to restore the building. they are here tonight if you have any questions about it, but that's the idea behind the stabilization strategy. It's that they need to do further exploratory work, but we want to secure the system is kind of how it works. And we'll be working alongside the building department.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple more questions. So is there flexibility with how much stabilization work is required? Like particularly if certain elements don't contribute directly to the property's heritage value? So, you know, if something's below ground and isn't of particular heritage value, are we giving you permission to say, let's not worry about that, let's worry about the structure as a whole? Because, I think that we kind of know what we want to see as a result, and how we get there, I'm pretty flexible about. So when it says to the director, for the director of planning, is that what we're kind of giving leeway to allow for that sort of permission to be granted?
Through the chair. So because it's exploratory and it's an evolving process, we wanted to have the flexibility for it to be to the satisfaction of the director of planning so that we can go with them now and work on those elements and continue the project so they don't have to stop and come back once they find what they need. So that's the idea behind having the conservation plan be completed to the satisfaction of the director of planning, and then same with the stabilization. So we'll work with them. But we did purposely with the designation, the way we designed the bylaw was to allow there to be flexibility to bring these elements back. And a lot of the interior elements won't be require approval from the committee or under the building. We'll mostly just be working with them on the general design of it. And of course, building will ultimately be the ones to review that. So, yeah.
Thank you for your great questions, Councillor DeFlavio. Any other questions from the committee? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. I got a couple. First one is, I guess I'll give you the first two. I think they're kind of related. I'll let you respond to those ones. First one is, how did the changes come to the attention? It's retroactive. The stuff was done. How did it get to staff's attention? And then related to that one, can you just remind me how the retro approval works? The work's obviously already been done, but they're asking for approval for work that didn't have approval initially. So can you just refresh on sort of what the purpose of doing it retroactively now that it's already been done is?
Through the chair. So for the retroactive approval, so when you go against the legislation, you don't want to continue to go against the legislation. So by us doing these retroactive approval, it stops the process of going against it. So now they have approvals to do what they're doing rather than not having approval from council to do that. Because ultimately it's council who authorizes the alterations of the building. So this is their way of moving from not being in alignment with the legislation to being in alignment with the legislation. So it's retroactive, but it needs to happen. And then some of the other things are them actually seeking approval prior to doing it. And then it came to our attention, we were invited over for a site visit, and that's when we had discovered that the work had been complete, had commenced without approvals. And so we informed them that they need to apply for approvals as soon as possible. So that's how it started. And we're it's an active file, so I can't comment too much on it at this time. But that's how we came to find out about it.
Through Chair. So this was designated officially, and we reviewed this in February, but it was finally designated in July. How soon after the July designation do we know the work commenced?
Through the chair, from my understanding, it's fairly recently, within the last month and a half.
All right, through you, Chair. The next one, so on the bylaw, it shows that part of the designated parts of the property are the door and window openings, and then in one of the pictures, it looks like the windows have all been removed. Can you just maybe clarify where, I know it says that those pieces aren't included, but I'm just trying to reconcile how it says that in the bylaw, but then, there's fairly substantially removed.
Through the chair, so it's not the actual doors and windows, it's the placement of where they are within the building. So a lot of the original dormers have the original openings of where the windows were. So it's because we didn't have the original windows, they were like an aluminum kind of thing. We didn't protect the aluminum, we protected the actual shape of the windows and their placement on the building. So those will be retained as a part of the restoration process.
One more, through you, Chair. It's not up anymore, but going back to the recommendations, there's, I think there was about 7 or 8 subjects, or maybe they're all subject twos. I guess, what would some of those things require further work to be done, like completeness of the application? I think there was another assessment that needed to be done. Would there be harm in having those get done first and then come back to review, or is it a timeline thing? Is there any reason why we would do it, like not have those get rectified and then look at it again in completeness?
Through you, the chair. So the idea behind these recommendations was to enable the restoration work to start. And that's just because we can see the building is quite open and we wanted to work towards the restoration of it rather than having it be vulnerable. So this kind of gives us time now for them to go out, do the work, bring it back, and then they have to complete it to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning rather than having to come back through the committee cycle. So the idea is that the building itself will be restored faster based on this approach, and be like less vulnerable is kind of the idea behind the recommendation.
Thank you for your questions, Brian. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, then I will move forward to reading out the resolution. It is a long one, as I'll be going through the recommendations put forward in the report. Resolved then that report HG 2418 for 2 5th Street Heritage Permit application be received, and that the committee recommends the heritage permit for 2 5th Street be recommended for approval subject to the following terms and conditions. That a structural stabilization plan be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, that the structural stabilization plan outlines how the building will be appropriately reinforced, if required, to enable further exploratory work and restoration. No additional exploratory or restoration work shall occur until stabilization has occurred, if required. All structural stabilization interventions may be required to stabilize the building be approved by heritage staff, that a conservation plan be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. Due to the small amount of information provided on the heritage permit application, it is required that all proposed works be further detailed with the conservation plan. And once the above conditions have been satisfied, heritage staff have the delegated authority to approve any minor removal of materials that is required due to unforeseen deterioration. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cristangi. And a seconder? Councillor DeFlavio. All in favor? All right, that will be carried. All right. Okay, that's carried. Thank you for those questions and that discussion. We'll move on to our announcement provided by Bianca.
Thank you, through you, the chair. So I have a announcement in regards to World Town Planning Day. So November 8th was Canada's 75th anniversary of World Town Planning Day. And in celebration of the 75th year of World Town Planning Day in Canada, Grimsby planning staff have organized several World Town Planning Day themed activities and events throughout Grimsby during the month of November. So planning themed activities are taking place at the library throughout November. There's some books for youth in the community to read, to learn more about planning, and there'll be some activities, some coloring sheets and things like that. So that will be at the library. We will be also having an engaging walking tour of downtown Grimsby, where we will close out the festivities on November 29th. The tour will provide an understanding of how Grimsby's rich history has influenced our built landscape. The tour is scheduled to begin at 3 p.m. at the Lions Club Community Pool on November 29th. We would also like to highlight that there will be a photo showcase, and this will be an opportunity for the community to showcase what they love about Grimsby, which is open for submission until December 12th, 2024 at 5 p.m. This is an opportunity to submit original photos of Grimsby and vote for your favorites. Winners will be chosen and announced online in January. To learn more about the prizes and how to submit a photo, please visit the World Town Planning Day webpage on grimsby.ca. Thank you.
Well, that's a really great initiative. Thank you very much for sharing. I think with that then, we can adjourn this evening's Heritage Committee meeting. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next